Mr. Griffin.
Good morning, Chair. Today the inquiry will hear from Mrs. Elspeth Delvany and Mr. Andres Patino. They will provide evidence about the use of Oxyvision in hospital trusts other than EPUT for the purposes of comparison. Mrs. Delvany is from Tees, Esk and Wear Valleys NHS Foundation Trust, and Mr. Patino is from Leicestershire Partnership NHS Trust. There may be aspects of today's evidence that are difficult to listen to. For some people, it may not be possible to sit through the full sessions. Anyone in the inquiry room should feel free to leave at any time. And may I take this opportunity to remind those engaging with the inquiry that emotional support is available for all who require it. Present again here today are representatives from Hestia, an experienced provider of emotional support at these types of hearings. They're currently in the room and they can be identified by their orange scarves. There is a private room downstairs where anyone who needs emotional support can talk to Hestia. And if you prefer, you can speak to a member of the inquiry team first, and we'll put you in touch with them. We're wearing purple lanyards. For those following the hearing online, information about emotional support is available and can be found on the Lampard Inquiry website at lampardinquiry.org.uk. The support tab is near the top right-hand corner. Chair, we want everyone engaging with this inquiry in whatever way to feel safe and supported. I'm going to ask now the witness be sworn, please.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Please provide your full name.
Elspeth Mary Delvany.
Mrs. Delvany, since March 2022, have you been Director of Nursing and Quality at Tees, Esk and Wear Valleys NHS Foundation Trust, or TUV?
That's correct.
Does TUV provide mental health, autism, learning disability and related services throughout County Durham and Darlington, Teesside, North Yorkshire, York and Selby?
Yes.
Are you a registered mental health nurse or RMN?
I am.
And when did you qualify as an RMN?
2002.
When did you start working at TUV?
In that year, as soon as I qualified.
Have you basically been employed at TUV since 2002?
Pretty much, apart from a 6-month secondment to another organisation approximately 18 months ago.
Can you help us with the roles that you've had at TUV prior to your current role?
So following my initial registration, I worked as kind of that route up from clinical lead, ward manager to a matron. I then spent quite a period of time in senior operational leadership roles, so I've worked as a head of service in a number of specialities, mental health services for older people, adult mental health services and also learning disabilities. I did a period of time as a director of operations in the organisation until I took up my recent substantive post, which is the Director of Nursing and Quality.
What does that role entail?
So my role is to work alongside, as a member of the care group board, alongside a clinical triumvirate, so a director of allied health professionals, a medical director, our managing director, operational lead for the services, and a director of patient experience. and operational directors to oversee the quality of care delivery across the services that are delivered within the organisation.
You're going to be helping us with information about the way in which the technology Oxyvision is used at TÜV. What is your experience or are your responsibilities in connection with that, please?
So I don't directly use Oxyvision myself, but I have oversight for services where it has been implemented and reviewed over the last few years since we first started to use Oxyvision in services. So I've seen our full journey with the use of Oxyvision.
And have you held senior roles, both operational and clinical, during the implementation of Oxyvision?
Yes.
Thank you. Does your role mean that if there was an incident in some way connected with Oxyvision or in which Oxyvision can assist, you would hear about it?
Yes.
And have you been involved in wider discussions about Oxyvision's impact on patients and families following concerns being raised there?
Yes.
Can we just talk about terminology, please? We're going to be talking about a technology we've been referring to as Oxyvision, provided by a company that we have been referring to as Oxy Health.
Yes.
There has recently been a rebranding. So, for example, the company is now called Leo. For the sake of simplicity, what I'd like to do is this, please. Can we continue to refer to the technology as Oxyvision and the company as Oxy Health?
Yes.
Now, I know that in some of the documentation that you've provided from TÜV, the technology is actually referred to as Oxy Health.
That's correct.
So that could become a little bit confusing. Between the two of us, we'll be clear about what you're referring to, yes?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, as you're aware, the inquiry received a witness statement from Beverly Murphy, TÜV's chief nurse, and a number of exhibits that were provided with it. Is it right that Mrs. Murphy is unable to give evidence to the inquiry at this hearing?
Yes.
And have you therefore agreed to step in to provide that evidence?
That's correct.
And have you also provided a brief witness statement to that effect?
I have.
Do you have Beverly Murphy's statement in front of you?
I do, yes.
Now, it's dated the 10th of June this year. Does it run to 16 pages?
Yes.
This statement says that it was prepared on the basis of the information collated by the Trust's leads on Oxyvision, namely a senior project manager and the Associate Director of Nursing and Quality for Secure Inpatient Services. That's at paragraph 3. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
In addition, did Mrs. Murphy bring her experience as the Trust's chief nurse to bear in drafting that statement? Do you know how long she has been chief nurse?
So she's been chief nurse at TÜV for, I would say, approximately 3 years, but she's held a number of chief nurse roles across the country prior to coming to work in TÜV.
If we turn to the last page of her statement, please. Over the bottom of page 15 and the top of page 16, can we see that there a statement of truth and that Mrs. Murphy has signed it?
Yes.
Given your own role and experience, do you feel confident in formally adopting this statement as your evidence to this inquiry, together with the further statement that you've provided?
I do.
And can you confirm that you're authorised to give evidence on behalf of TÜV in relation to the matters addressed in Mrs. Murphy's statement?
I am, that's correct.
Can you confirm that both statements are true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
So these statements stand as part of your evidence along with the exhibits provided. I'm not therefore going to be covering everything that's set out in them, but you're welcome to refer to them as you need to. The Lampard Inquiry is investigating the circumstances surrounding the deaths of mental health inpatients under the care of NHS trusts in Essex between the start of 2000 and the end of 2023. Its terms of reference require the Chair to make recommendations and permit her to make national recommendations as she considers appropriate. The Chair heard last year from representatives of Oxy Health and also Essex Partnership University NHS Foundation Trust, or EPERT, and we'll be hearing further evidence from both organisations. The Chair was told last year that Oxyvision is currently used by approximately 50% of the National Health Service mental health trusts, and the inquiry has now obtained evidence from a number of further NHS trusts which use or have used Oxyvision in order to assist its assessment of how the system has been implemented, governed and used in practice across different settings. In particular, this comparative evidence is intended to assist the inquiry in assessing whether issues arising from the evidence concerning EPERT are trust-specific or are reflected more widely in the implementation and use of Oxyvision elsewhere. So thank you for coming today to assist us for that purpose. So for reasons I've just explained, Mrs. Devaney, the inquiry is aware of Oxyvision, and in general terms, its intended use and its actual use at EPERT. Although, as I say, we'll be hearing more about that. What I'd like to do now is to start by looking at a couple of TÜV documents by way of introduction, please. So could you put up, please, TEWV 021317 at page 1. Now, this is a TÜV leaflet detailing Oxyvision use, provided to patients at TÜV. And this is from the initial deployment of Oxyvision at the Trust. Can we just see parts of it now? First of all, on the left-hand side, what Oxyvision does. It's a medical device that uses an infrared sensitive camera to measure your pulse and breathing rate. It lets staff know whether you are in your room. It provides notifications to staff as explained on the next page. And can we see at the bottom a picture of the unit? Yes?
Yeah.
And on the left of the unit, the camera sensor, and then on the right, infrared lights. Now, the fact that it's able to measure pulse and breathing rates, is that referred to as the vital signs function?
That's correct.
And we'll come back to that in just a moment. Looking at the right-hand side, where Oxyvision is located, in every bedroom on the ward, and can we see the unit there? It's fixed to the corner between the ceiling and the wall, above the patient's bed in this case. Elsewhere, the Trust has referred to Oxyvision in connection with vision-based patient monitoring systems, or VBPMS. Is Oxyvision considered to be a VBPMS?
Yes.
We've heard elsewhere that Oxyvision is considered to be contact-free. Is that correct? And what does contact-free mean?
I suppose the device is situated in a room, so there's no contact with the patient. It's there, it's in a permanent situation, and it doesn't have any direct contact with the patient.
Thank you. Could you take that down, please? So just picking up on vital signs. I'd like to look at TÜV's OxyHealth procedure, which is a document from August 2024, please, where it deals with how to take a vital signs observation. This is still by way of introduction.
Yeah.
Could you put up TEWV, thank you very much, just for the record, TEWV 313 and page 50, please. Can we, what I'm going to ask is that we take each box in turn, starting with the step 1 at the top. Thank you. So, is the Oxyvision system operated either through a monitor, possibly in a nurse's station, or through handheld tablets that staff can carry with them on the ward?
So both those things are true. So there's a system box that is in the ward office, but then the staff use handheld tablets. To take vital signs, they would be using the handheld tablet and standing directly outside the room of the patient that they wanted to take that vital signs from.
Thank you. Can we go through the process that they would go through now, please? Do we see here a screenshot from that system? In other words, what staff would see when they're looking at the tablet?
That's correct.
And what can we see here at step 1?
So that's what they would see on the actual tablet as they were outside the room.
So do each of these squares, some of which are green, represent bedrooms?
Yes.
And if they're green, does that mean that the bedroom is occupied?
Yes, that's correct.
And if one wanted to take a vital signs measurement, would one start by clicking on the box for the room in which the relevant patient was? Is that what we see here?
Yes.
Can we move to the next step, please? Would you highlight or expand step 2? Thank you very much. Now, does this show how a staff member selects the option to take an observation?
Yes.
Moving then, please, to the step 3. Thank you. First of all, can we now see what's termed a clear view of the patient in their room?
Yes.
We'll come on to what that is in a moment. So this is the view from the camera in the unit we were just looking at, is it?
Can that view be accessed from both the tablet and from the monitor
Yes.
in the nurse's station?
Yes, from both.
Thank you.
And we can see there at the top, it says step 3, check if the patient is still and click ready for observation. If not, click cancel. Can you explain why it's necessary for the patient to be still?
So it's to get an accurate reading that would be medically valid.
So it wouldn't work if they were moving around?
Possibly not, yeah.
Thank you. Would you go to the next page, please, and expand the top step 4? So we can see here it says, check if there are blobs that are not touching the body. If all blobs appear on the body, click the blue no bottom. If any of the blobs are not touching the body, click the grey yes bottom. So we may need a little bit of help with that. What is happening there, please?
So my understanding is that actually it needs to be clearly directly on the body to get that valid reading. So it's about the infrared in the system, but I don't understand the technology fully.
But in short, do the blobs, can we actually see a blue blob in there? They need to be on the patient.
That's correct.
If a correct reading is to be taken.
Yes.
And thank you. Would you expand the next and final stage, please? So can we see here, record observation or observations and click done? And do we see below the picture of the person in their bedroom, 2 boxes? One says HR 72 BPM and one says BR 21 BR per minute. Now, are those measurements for that patient's heart and breathing rates?
Yeah, pulse and resps.
So have the vital signs, or at least these 2 measurements, now been captured by the system?
Yes.
And by clicking done, does that record them into the system?
Yes.
Is it right that the vital signs function is only able to take heart and breathing rate readings within certain parameters?
Yes.
Now, as I understand it, for the pulse rate, that's between 50 and 130 beats per minute. And for the breathing rate, it's between 8 and 39 breaths per minute. Do you know whether that's right?
I don't, I'm sorry.
Can you also confirm that the system does not send an automatic alert or notification for fluctuations in vital signs?
No.
You can confirm that?
Yeah, it doesn't.
To what extent would the vital signs function actually alert staff to a deterioration in a patient's physical health?
It wouldn't unless we were taking the actual reading. It does. The system allows us to monitor themes, so the system is assessing that at all points. So it would allow us to see trends in somebody's hearts and respirates, but that wouldn't be medically accurate unless it's been taken in this way outside the door of the room.
So the themes that you might be able to see is to trace, for example, a breathing rate
Yeah,
during the time the person's in the bedroom.
yeah,
So long as it's within those parameters that I was just talking
yes.
about. Thank you. Could you take that down, please? I want to move now.
Sorry, can I ask about that? It can trace how... Does it have a special function to trace it, or is that just a case of you having to go back and look at all the readings to assess what has happened?
Yeah, it's actually part of the system, but the part of the system that we would use is that function where we would take one reading for a specific reason. I don't know whether... Do you want me to explain that now? So the only reason we would use vital signs is overnight, where somebody is on general observation, so it isn't a level of risk, but it would be to do with... we do care rounds on an hourly basis, which can be quite disruptive to patients' sleep. So we would use this if the patient is able to consent, and if the patient is in agreement, we could care plan that we would use the vital signs overnight. Or we may use it if somebody perhaps is in seclusion or had rapid trank and we are unable to physically take observations, that we would use this as an additional way to monitor to understand if the patient was safe.
We'll come on to that in a little bit more detail, particularly in relation to nighttime use. What I'd like to do first, though, is to come on to the implementation and rollout of Oxyvision at TÜV, please. The statement, so when I'm going to refer to Mrs. Murphy's statement as the statement,
Yes.
just so that we're clear. So the statement says this is page 3, paragraph 4. Implementation of OxyHealth at the Trust commenced in 2019 with a pilot running across 5 wards. The system went live on 3 wards at the end of 2020. So as we understand it, TÜV was fairly early in the context of mental health trusts in piloting and implementing Oxyvision. Could we look at part of the business case put forward for Oxyvision, please? Now, before we do, are you able to confirm that this was co-authored with the company OxyHealth?
So I'm not able to confirm that because some of the people who were involved at that time in the organisation have moved on. So I don't understand the detail of how that business case was prepared.
So this is what paragraph 66 and 67 of the Murphy statement say. That's page 15. The Trust is unable to confirm the extent to which OxyHealth was involved in the design or drafting of the Trust's business case due to the passage of time and due to persons involved in preparing the initial business case no longer working within the organisation. That's the point you just made, isn't it?
Yes.
It goes on to say this. The business case is dated the 14th of August 2019 and the document indicates it was co-authored by OxyHealth and Elizabeth Moody, Director, Nursing and Governance, Deputy CEO at the time. So that would indicate that there was OxyHealth involvement in the production of the business case. Would you agree?
Yes.
Put up, please, TUV 021330, page 1, and would you expand the executive summary, please? So as I've just said, this is the business case. It's in fact entitled OxyHealth Digital Care Assistant Trial to Scale,
Yeah.
and dated the 14th of August 2019, as I mentioned. It says at the start this: TUV would like to explore OxyHealth's Digital Care Assistant, DCA, to, first of all, improve safety, quality, and patient experience in inpatient facilities, and to release pressure on our inpatient workforce by saving clinical time on wards. So can we see there a variety of purposes being considered for Oxyvision, from improving safety to saving clinical time?
Yes.
If we drop down a bit, we can see this. The Trust would like to trial to scale the DCA across a representative set of inpatient services, building on learning from other NHS trusts. Should it deliver benefits to patients, staff and the Trust, TUV has intent to scale it across its services. Each locality has nominated services to take part in the trial to scale. Is another word for trial to scale pilot?
Yes.
Based on highest unmet clinical need, geographic spread, and minimal operational disruption. And can we see then 5 pilot wards?
Yes.
Do they cover MHSOP, mental health services for older people?
Yes.
PICU, psychiatric intensive care unit?
Yes.
CAMS, child and adolescent mental health services?
Now, that area did not go ahead because those wards were closed prior to it being installed, I understand.
Thank you for clarifying
Yeah.
that. But also an adult acute ward and a seclusion ward.
Yes.
So the pilot covered a range of wards and
Yes.
services deliberately. Just going back to what's on our screen towards the bottom, OxyHealth have created a long-term investment option that would make both trial to scale and widespread uptake feasible for the Trust. And then figures are given on a monthly basis for the trial, reducing to another figure at scale, and further reducing per ward per year. We can see at the end here, whilst the trial will focus on quality improvement, anticipated financial benefits include a reduction in enhanced observations, reducing agency and bank spend, time and cost savings associated with fewer incident and associated reviews, and the time savings associated with faster, more effective observation and interventions on wards. Can you see that?
Yes.
So the reference there is both to a reduction in enhanced observations and to faster and more effective observation, correct?
Yes.
Can you explain why it was felt use of the technology might lead to a reduction in enhanced observations and to faster observations?
I can't, because that's not what the system allows us to do, and it's not my understanding of how we've ever used it as an organisation. We've always been very clear that actually it does not replace the need for engagement with patients, and is an assistive technology and does not therefore mitigate the use of additional staff and resource. All I can think is that people felt that it might contribute that at the time when the business case was developed.
So your explanation is that this might have been one of the early reasons for trialling,
Yeah.
but your understanding is that it hasn't been the purpose for which it was procured and used.
No.
do you know whether Oxyvision was introduced, at least in part, because there was a concern about the rising need for enhanced observations?
No, it was about patient safety and improving patient safety on our wards. And at that time, we had a number of patient safety incidents that drove us to look at a number of ways, I suppose, to improve the safety of environments. So OxyHealth was considered alongside the use of specific doors on inpatient areas, so door alarms, and also key environmental changes around reducing ligatures in our inpatient environments.
Thank you. But there does appear to be something of a mismatch between this early intention and what transpired in your evidence.
Yes, I accept
Thank
that.
you. Just dealing with financial benefits, please. So at this early stage, there were anticipated to be financial benefits associated with the operation of Oxyvision within the TUV wards, yes?
Yes.
The business case, and just to remind us, this is from 2019, refers to a potential saving to the Trust of over £1 million a year, arising from a 20% reduction in enhanced observations, which are mainly carried out by bank and agency staff, and we saw a reference to them, didn't we, just now? Did TUV actually see those financial benefits?
No.
As far as you're aware, has it continued to be the case that there's been no saving in staff costs arising from the use of Oxyvision?
That's correct.
The statement, this is paragraph 4 at page 2, goes on to say that in 2021, permission to extend its use was obtained from the Trust Board, and the use has been extended further since. The system is currently operating on over 50 wards across the Trust's sites. In what types of wards is Oxyvision now operating?
I think it's that full range of that small pilot group that was used initially. It's used in adult mental health wards, rehab, including rehab assessment and treatment and psychiatric intensive care units. It's used across our secure inpatient estate. It's used on our mental health services for older people.
Across the board?
Yes.
Does that include CAMS? We were just talking about...
We don't deliver any CAMS inpatient services.
You've helpfully, or TUV have helpfully provided a list of the wards to us. We don't need to put it up on the screen. But can you confirm this, that there's been a steady rollout of Oxyvision across the TUV wards ever since 2020?
That's correct.
And there were further wards that were to go live this year, is that correct?
Yes.
And further wards to go live in the future?
Yes.
What proportion of inpatient wards now have it installed?
A large proportion. I wouldn't like to give an exact percentage, but the majority of our wards now have that facility.
Are there any wards that don't?
So we don't have it on our learning disabilities wards. Yeah, and apart from that, it's pretty much all areas. They're not all in use currently. That's what I would say, since we've reviewed our policy and updated our consent model. So there's a lot more out of use, but the actual provision is available in those areas.
Thank you. The Murphy statement talks about wards where there have been high opt-out rates, and also wards where, potentially with a higher risk, where it's used more. Do you mind if we come back to address that a little bit later?
Of course.
The statement explains that at the time of the initial deployment, there were no risks identified in the initial proposals. That's paragraph 34 at page 8. So we'll be hearing this afternoon from a witness from another trust. It's right to note that they were trialling Oxyvision later than you were at TUV, and they identified, I think, 7 risks. Do you find it surprising that no risks were identified by TUV, even if it was 2019?
Yes.
The statement, this is paragraph 34 at page 8, and the next page. It then lists anticipated benefits. We don't need to put this up, but do you have it in front of you?
Yes.
Are they as follows? So these are the benefits that were anticipated at the start of the process.
What paragraph were you at?
So this is paragraph 34 under the title Benefits and Risks of Oxyvision. Do you have that?
Yes, thank you.
Are the anticipated benefits as follows: to reduce falls, to reduce self-harm, including ligatures. Why was it felt, do you know, that there might be a reduction in self-harm?
So I'm not sure whether people thought that the system could offer us more than actually we understood once the system was installed. So there is an option in terms of activity that actually it can tell us where people are in a room. So actually it does add some benefits in terms of it can tell us, for example, if somebody is standing for a longer period in the bathroom, 3 minutes in a bathroom or standing near a door. So that may help us indicate that a patient was going to engage in a self-harm activity.
So this is the alert function which we'll come on
Yes.
to. Do you think that's what this reduction of self-harm might be referring to?
Potentially, yeah.
The anticipated benefits include reducing assaults. Do you know how it was anticipated that Oxyvision could operate to reduce assaults?
No, I don't.
The next is to reduce restrictive interventions. How would that benefit, do you know, be realised using Oxyvision?
I suppose there may be some benefit in people not having disturbed sleep overnight to use that vital signs check overnight, but that's the only one I can think of.
Because disturbing a patient might lead
To distress.
to distress.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next we can see is improved physical health monitoring. Is that a reference, do you think, to the vital signs function?
Potentially, but our physical health monitoring would take place, you know, kind of regularly on our wards in terms of that monitoring on a daily basis. The system only provides resps and pulse. So actually, the circumstances where it can help with that might be around those circumstances I mentioned earlier. If somebody has been in receipt of rapid tranquilisation or is in seclusion, where you're unable to get their physical obs in any other way.
So we have received evidence about News 2.
Yes.
Could you just explain briefly what that is?
So that we use News 2 as a regularly daily monitoring, and what it is, it almost takes a range of physical observations, it produces a score, and if that score caused us concern, then it would indicate that we needed to seek, you know, either a review from a medic or perhaps emergency response if the score was high enough to indicate that.
So you use that, as do many
Yes.
trusts, across the mental health wards.
That's correct.
Does that involve taking actually 6 measurements?
Yes.
2 of which are the vital signs measurements we've talked about, but then 4 others, including, for example, blood pressure?
Yes, yeah.
So the vital signs function is able to assist with 2 out of the 6 news measurements,
Yeah.
but not the others.
Not the others, no.
Thank you. We can see here also improved patient experience at night. Is that for the reason you started to explain
Yes.
to us? Thank you. And we'll come to discuss that a little bit more in a moment. And then we see improved staff experience. Are you able to say why staff experience might be improved?
So I think there's something about for with the workforce in mental health. I think they worry about patients. They worry about kind of patients self-harming, etc. So I think it may have been thought back in when we first looked at introducing the system that that would somehow help build staff confidence around, you know, clinical decision making that they were making, that it was an additional tool to support that clinical decision making.
So an assistive technology?
Yes.
Now, the statement includes a column for the types of ward where each of these benefits might be felt most keenly. So is it right that not all of the benefits we've just been addressing would necessarily apply across the range of wards?
Yes.
Some will be more important in certain contexts?
Yes.
Thank you. So having dealt with potential risks and benefits, can we move on to talk about the purpose of Oxyvision at Tube? We started to talk about that already. The Trust's OxyHealth policy, which is from 2024, refers to the primary purpose of Oxyvision as being to assist staff in enhancing and supporting patient safety in real time. That chimes with what you've just been saying, doesn't it? Would you just develop that for us, please?
I think it was absolutely a part of a suite of things that we've done to try and improve safety on inpatient areas. I mentioned the other environmental changes that we made. So I think the organisation were keen to explore anything that might give that opportunity to reduce incidents and you know, improve the care of the patients that are inpatients on our wards.
Is a significant element of that the intention was that Oxyvision should not be used to replace
Absolutely.
staff to patient contact?
Yeah, engagement with patients is absolutely key in mental health, and you know the narrative has always been very clear that this is an assistive technology and it is not there to replace the engagement or the importance of staff engagement with patients.
Now, one of the points that's being made to the inquiry, and we'll hear more about later, is that there is a potential disconnect between policy and expectations on the one hand and what actually happens on the ground at wards. Do you know the point that I'm making?
Yes, I think we've experienced that in TUV.
Well, I was going to ask, the expectation at TUV might have been that this should be an assistive or add-on tool. Has it actually happened or potentially happened that at TUV it's been used sometimes to replace that kind of therapeutic face-to-face connection that one would want to see?
So, no, but I think that that message has always been very clear. But I think what we did see is actually, you know, we'd set a number of alerts on the system that potentially led to some alert fatigue for staff, because we initially set up the system to do more than it does now. So, for example, it would alert if somebody had left their bedroom after 9 p.m. at night. So the amount of alerts that were happening across our inpatient areas was excessive and described as unmanageable by staff.
Let's just deal with alerts now. Did TUV have potential alerts? It's paragraph 21 at page 6 for a patient at the door of their bedroom, in their bathroom, leaving their bed, out of their bed, and room entry.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't apply again to all wards, did they? Those might apply more to particular kinds of wards. is that right?
Yes, so the leaving the bed and the out of bed only applies to our mental health services for older people. And indeed, that's where I think we've seen the benefit of the use of the system.
Was there previously a further out-of-room alert?
There was.
Oh, is this what you were talking about?
Yes,
So that was deactivated, is that correct?
it was, yes.
The statement says, this is paragraph 22, that that was to allow staff to concentrate on critical
Yes.
alerts. You mentioned fatigue, I think, alarm
Yes.
fatigue. Was that an issue?
Yes, it was an issue.
There are still a lot of alerts and alarms, aren't there, not limited to Oxyvision?
Yes, there are. There's still quite a high proportion, but it has reduced significantly since we've done that work to reduce the, to take off the out of room alert. And we've also done a lot of work around the changes in the policy since 2004 to educate people beyond the use of the system and understanding the implications, I suppose, of the delivery of the system.
But is there still an issue or a possible issue of the multiplicity of alerts and alarms overwhelming staff and leading to fatigue?
Yes, and they have reduced significantly, and what I would say is that we now have a monthly matron report. So we explore, we survey three patients or staff on every ward each month, and there's a matron report that gives us assurance around the function and the use of the system. So we are able to then validate that the alerts are being addressed appropriately as part of that monthly assurance audit.
Thank you. We'll come back to the governance around the use of Oxyvision a little later. You've mentioned using the system for nighttime observations.
Yes.
Can we just deal with the observations part of that first, please? Can we just be clear about what you mean by observations? Because we know that there is the vital signs function,
Yeah.
but there is also a facility to view a patient in advance of taking
Yeah.
the vital signs function through the tablet or screen.
Yeah.
When you say observations, what do you actually mean?
So on mental health wards, we use observations as intervention in terms of managing risk. So when I refer to observations in relation to Oxy Health, we don't use Oxyvision, we don't use Oxyvision to manage risk. What we also carry out on all of our wards is what we call, as part of our policy, general observations. So that applies to all of our patients. Just a well-being check, if you like, on the hour of every hour to check that somebody's okay, that if there's anything that they need, have a conversation with them during the day. And so we do that on the hour, every hour on a ward.
Is that also during night?
Yes, yes.
So in addition to using Oxyvision, would a member of staff be going into a patient's room every hour?
Yes, or checking their whereabouts. So they wouldn't necessarily go into their room, but there's a care round that happens all the time for all patients, just to say, are they okay? Is there anything that you need, etc.
But might that involve going into the patient's room during the night time?
It could, and that's where we're using Oxyvision, if appropriate, if somebody has the capacity to consent, and if we're not using that as a level of risk. So we would use the vital signs check instead of the going into the room to, which potentially could disturb somebody.
I'm not understanding, and it is me, not you. I'm trying to work out how you're using Oxyvision at night. So there is the facility to take vital signs measurements in a contact-free way,
Yeah.
so you don't disturb
Yeah.
the patient. But that's not observations, is it? That's a health check of
It's
sorts.
a care round. It's a care round.
So to what extent at night is Oxyvision, the system, being used for the purposes of observations?
So for formal observations around risk, it's not used at all. If anybody has a level of risk, so they have a risk of self-harm behaviour, that would absolutely be carried out by a person, and it would be face-to-face monitoring. Where OxyHealth is used at night is to replace those care rounds. So if I describe what happens, that might be helpful.
Yes.
So the member of staff would go to the patient's room. If we didn't have OxyHealth, they might look through the visor. They might not be able to see somebody's breathing or respirates, or might see something, kind of that would concern them. So they would still go and check in that room. If the patient is settled, if the patient has consented and agreed, they would take a vital signs reading outside of that room, so it prevents them having to go actually into the room and, disturb the patient. So it's purely around that care rounds check, not around observation around risk.
And if a patient is a risk,
Yes.
or is in any way a risk,
Yeah.
what happens?
They would have one-to-one observations, or as prescribed by our engagement and observation policy.
And what does that amount to?
So for some...
At night?
For some people, that could be one-to-one, so they may have a member of staff with them at all times. That could be, some patients have 2-to-1. Some people, kind of may have what's known as intermittent observations, so we might go and check on them regularly, 2 times an hour, or, have an increased number of engagements throughout the day. That can change during night and day. Some of our patients experience distress at different times during the day, so that would be care planned with their MDT to understand what would be therapeutic and beneficial to their safety.
Can I just ask one more?
Please, please.
Prior to Oxyvision
Yeah.
being installed, what sort of check would have happened at night?
It would have been the care rounds as I described. They would go to the room, but if they couldn't establish that the patient was breathing, that everything was okay in the room, they would go in. So the patient may be disturbed every hour, just for the sake of somebody checking on them.
So the process that's adopted at TUV doesn't actually save staff time.
No.
It allows for, in certain circumstances, less disturbance of the patient.
Yes, an improved patient experience.
But in the context of the potential need to go into the room in any event during the night.
Yeah.
There are different levels of observation that we are hearing about, and we'll hear more about tomorrow. What level of observations is it permitted to use Oxyvision for at TUV?
So if there's any element of risk, it's not allowed. It's not used at all. It's only around general observation that applies to all patients who come onto our wards, and that's purely a wellbeing check.
So any form of enhanced observations, which we've heard TUV referred to levels 2 to level 4, it would not be appropriate to use Oxyvision. You would need to revert to the non-Oxyvision way.
Yeah.
Thank you. The business plan that we looked at so this is at the start of the process, referred to one of the anticipated benefits being a reduction in enhanced observations.
Yeah.
Your evidence is clear that it should not be used for enhanced observation.
No.
So is that an example, again, of an element of the business case, it was hoped might assist, not actually being the case in terms of how it was actually deployed on the ground at TUV?
That's correct.
Or intended to be deployed. Thank you. So you've referred to using it at night only and not during the day. How would you define night? Between what hours?
So I suppose it's difficult because some of our patients, kind of go to bed at different times. It's when the patient is in their room and asleep. That's when that would be used, because the person would take the vital signs outside the room. I suppose the only other occasion is when I've mentioned if somebody was perhaps in seclusion or had had rapid trank, and if we felt that we couldn't, we would always try and take physical observations for the point you made earlier, manually. But actually, if we couldn't, then to get resps and pulse would be, if that would be beneficial, we would use it in that way.
Why is it useful to have that facility for that type of scenario, seclusion, for example?
Yeah. Because you're working with a highly distressed patient at a very difficult time, and actually, you know, it's important that we do that physical monitoring after physical intervention or medical intervention to make sure that we're constantly monitoring the patient's well-being.
So might vital signs and oxyvision be used during the day for that kind of patient?
Potentially, yes.
So there are scenarios in which it is permitted to use it during the day in certain types
Yes.
of ward or service?
Yes, it would be infrequent, but yes, that is possible in those scenarios.
Seclusion, what would the other or others be?
Seclusion, or if somebody's had rapid tranquilization and perhaps then they've gone back to their bedroom.
The statement is clear that otherwise oxyvision is not to be used during the day. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
So we have seen, and you've helpfully provided, monthly usage reports provided. This is one of the benefits of the oxyvision system as we understand it, is that the type of data and reports it can provide to trusts. Monthly usage reports, are they amongst the information that a trust such as TUV can receive from
Yes.
oxyvision? Do these provide a ward-by-ward summary of certain aspects of the use of oxyvision?
Yes.
And do they also provide, I think towards the end usually, an all-ward summary on a single
Yeah.
page? Do the ward summaries cover things like the number of vital signs attempts each
Yeah.
day and the number of successful times vital signs have actually been taken?
Yes.
And other key data like that?
Yes.
Could we look at part of one of those now, please? Would you put up TUV 021321 at page 3 and expand section 1? Would you expand the top box? That's very helpful, thank you. So can we see ESC at the top there? And is that a reference to the ESC ward at Cross Lane Hospital in Scarborough?
Yes, that's correct.
Is that a female acute ward
It
with
is.
13 beds?
Yes.
So we can see here that this shows attempts to take vital signs in ESC in June 2024.
Yeah.
Do the numbers running along the bottom there from 1 to 30 denote days of the month?
Yes.
And can we see above each day a bar showing the cumulative total of vital signs attempts?
Yes.
So could we see, for example, that on the 26th, it was up to 340?
Yeah.
And do you see that the bars are split into two, showing attempts during the day and during the night? So the night is the darker, I don't really dare say what colour that is, but blue of some sort. And then the lighter blue is during the day.
Yes.
We know from the monthly report that daytime results are from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m, with nighttime results for 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. So can we see actually here, from the light blue part of each of these bars, that there are vital signs attempts during the day as well as at night?
Yes.
Are you able to explain that, if the purpose of oxyvision at TUV is for nighttime use?
So I think this was around the period that we discovered that people were using vital signs attempts from the system that was available in the office and on their handheld device. And actually, because what was happening was that as alerts were happening, so that might be that we'd been alerted that somebody had been in their bathroom for a period of time or against the door for a period of time, staff were using this system to check whether the patient was okay. Obviously, that didn't fit with our policy and procedure at that time, so that was the time that we had to do a lot of work on reducing this, how people were using vital signs.
So if we were to ask for the equivalent monthly usage report for June 2026, it would look quite different?
Yes. Yes.
You said earlier that you didn't think that there had been instances of using Oxyvision as a substitute for engagement.
Yes.
Do you think these figures also identify that that might also have been going on?
No, because I think this is a different concern for staff. So I think staff have been well-intentioned when they're using this vital signs attempts because they're worried that something has happened to the patient in the room, because this could be a patient who's an informal patient on no level of prescribed observations, but they can press the system and then an image appears of that we saw earlier. So actually they can check if the patient's safe. So
this, you think, is attributable only to misguided response to alerts?
Yeah, I do, yes.
Have you had any instances of anybody reporting people using this also to undertake routine observations
No.
and engagement?
Not that I can recall, no.
Okay, thank you.
Is it a possibility that this represents some form of misuse?
This does represent misuse, yes.
But illicit use outside policy, potentially, for example, to watch someone in the privacy of their bedroom?
At that time, so we had a procedure in place, not a policy, and this was around the time that we reviewed that situation and developed the policy. But yes, this isn't appropriate use of the system.
Putting this point to one side, please, the fact that it's clearly... Oh, by the way, if you scroll through the other wards in the month that you've provided us in 2024, we do see a similar pattern. So it's not... I haven't just picked this one at random. Yeah. But putting that point to one side, I just want to ask you this question, possibly before we have a break. On one view, would you agree with this? Oxyvision, the observations and the vital signs function is intended to be used, and also the alerts, but it's intended to be used for quite a narrow purpose.
Yes.
Actually, if you'd agree with that.
Yes.
Do you... Well, we'll obviously discuss more, but do you consider, given the narrowness of the purposes of Oxyvision at TUV, do you consider it's proportionate to pay for that system and to have it in the wards?
So I think our knowledge of the system has grown since first implementation in 2019. I think that people's intention to install the system was absolutely with that purpose to improve patient safety. I think that the knowledge that we've gained over the years has caused us to question that, and we're currently undertaking a review.
Well, I'm going to ask you about that review a little later on.
Yeah.
So this is a review that's underway at the moment.
Yes.
Is it possible that the repercussions of that review will be that the manner in which Oxyvision is deployed at TUV, or whether it's used at all, will be reconsidered?
Yes, potentially alongside an evaluation that we're also is currently, the scope is being developed. So we've got the review that is currently looking at how we align to our current policy, whether we've got the consent model right, and querying, you know, kind of our longer term commitment to the system.
So it's all up for grabs, basically.
Yeah, potentially when we do the evaluation, because we want to understand the benefits. I think it's important to say that any decision to remove the system needs to be well considered, to ensure that actually there are some potentials that if we remove this system suddenly, that our patients' understanding of what it delivers and our staff's understanding could potentially introduce some risk.
Thank you very much. Chair, we've been going for an hour and 10 minutes. May I suggest a break until 11:25?
Yes, 11:25. Mr. Griffin.
Mrs. Devaney, we were looking at purposes of the Oxford system. I just want to ask you about one more of those, please, now. When we were looking at the screenshots earlier on in your evidence about how to take a vital signs measurement, we saw a clear view of a patient in their room, didn't we? Is another purpose of Oxyvision the retention of what's referred to as clear video data or footage that can subsequently be accessed if there's been an incident or something similar?
So I suppose that's not an intended purpose of the system, but it can be and has been used in that way. So you can request a clear view image from Oxyvision within 24 hours of an incident. And
just to pause there, is it deleted after that 24-hour period, the data?
So no, because you can still receive it's almost a blurred vision. So a blurred video of the same picture or you can request that up to 3 months after an incident.
So can we just pause for a second? So if there's been a patient safety incident, one option is that you can have clear video data, but that needs to be obtained within 24 hours.
Yes.
Another option is that you can have what is sometimes referred to as blurred or pixelated or anonymized footage that is available for considerably longer. Did you say 3 months?
3 months, but I understand that might be about to change, that may be changing to it needs to be requested within 28 days, but currently you can request up to 3 months.
So we've heard the vital signs function allows someone, a member of staff, a clear view of a patient prior to taking the vital signs.
Yeah.
Is that for 15 seconds?
Yes.
And that's what's explained to the patient, is it?
Yes.
Now, in fact, we have learnt at the inquiry that the Oxyvision system, if it's switched on, is actually recording a patient in their bedroom 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
Is that ever explained to patients at TÜV?
Yes.
I haven't seen any explanation in any of the documentation that you've provided, procedures, policies, leaflets or posters. It's not explained there as far as I'm aware. Do you understand it to be explained there?
So part of the work that we did in 2024 was about the understanding of the capabilities of the system. So absolutely, people I speak to on our wards the work that we've done with the Associate Directors of Nursing, that is explained, that it's always there and available. We would only request to see that if there was a criminal or coronial process that meant that that information was requested, and that is signed off by only our chief nurse or our deputy chief nurse.
I think the 2 points there, both obviously valid. The second point is the use to which the footage can be put if it's obtained within the 24-hour period.
Yes.
And your point there, as I understand it, is that's quite confined
It is.
and subject to an authoritative sign-off.
Yes, yes. So a ward manager, for example, they could come through the request process. They could request, but that may be declined because it wasn't felt an appropriate use of the footage. So that is signed off at chief nurse or deputy chief nurse level.
So that's a safeguard that's built
Yes.
in. So that point is clearly made, but I want to just go back to the point I was asking you about before, and that is what is explained to patients.
Yeah.
Would you accept that if a patient were to know that an activated Oxyvision system in their room is actually recording them 24/7 would be quite a significant piece of information?
Yes.
The point I was making is that I have not seen that explicitly explained in the policy procedure poster leaflet that you've provided to us. Have I got that wrong, or is that your understanding as well?
So I wouldn't be able to comment on all of those in detail. If that's the case, I think that's something as an organisation that we do need to address.
But is your point that your understanding is that it would be explained to a patient in some way?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you know how that would happen? Because presumably members of staff and are working from policy.
Yeah.
And if the policy doesn't make that clear, how will they know to explain it to a patient?
Yeah, so our explanation around the system starts from the point that it's considered that somebody may come into one of our hospital beds. So that first conversation I would expect occurs with members of our crisis team that explain that we have the system. And that conversation is then picked up with the ward team at the point of admission. The system stays on in our wards for 72 hours. And
We'll come on to all of that in some detail in a moment.
Yeah.
But is the point there that the discussion with the patient starts before they even reach the ward?
Yes, yeah.
How do you know that conversation takes place?
So part of that is about the audit. I suppose prior to 2024, I wouldn't have been confident that we were doing that. But part of the conversation, the audit that we do now is carried out by our matrons and does explore people's understanding of the system, its function. We speak to patients. We have a patient experience board that actually are part of our whole implementation of Oxyvision.
So if a patient was to have this explained to them, it would have to be in at the face-to-face stage if it's not mentioned in any of the documentation.
Yes, yeah.
And you believe it would be mentioned in the face-to-face?
I do, yes.
I'm going to look at a document with you now, please. Would you please put up 021314? This is one of the leaflets. Would you go to page 7, please, and expand the bottom? What can staff see? Would you expand that, please? So this is a leaflet from July 2025, so quite recent, entitled Oxyhealth Information for Patients. This is what we see in part of the leaflet. What can staff see? Ward staff will use Oxyhealth to check your pulse and breathing rates. When these checks take place, staff will only have access to a clear image of your room for up to 15 seconds. These checks are used very infrequently and only when there is a clinical need. This will not replace care rounds or staff coming straight to your room if you need help or support. Staff will also have access to a blurred image of your room for up to 15 seconds only when they receive a notification of a safety alert from the system. Staff will come straight to your room if they see you need help during their checks. Just picking up on that first sentence, please. Ward staff will use OxyHealth to check pulse and breathing rates. We spoke before about the 6 measurements that need to be taken as part of the News 2 approach. What's the point of just taking 2 of the 6?
So I suppose it's understanding that somebody is safe, that, you know, kind of that it tells you something about somebody's physical presentation, even with those 2 readings. As I say, we would only use that in terms of if it was to replace those overnight care rounds, or in circumstances where somebody was in seclusion or had rapid tranquilization.
But if it's taken quite a narrow view of of much fuller measurement requirements, is its use potentially quite narrow?
Absolutely, yes.
We looked at the screenshots of how you go through the system, and you confirmed that once the vital signs measurements are taken,
Yep.
they're then loaded onto the system.
Yes.
What happens to that data?
You're asking me a technological question.
It's not a technological question. It's a question about information, medical information, being gathered by a trust and the purposes to which that's put.
Yeah.
Did you have an answer?
So I suppose in terms of what the vital signs are used, what the member of staff see, they use
Yes.
that to inform anything that actions that they might need to take at that point. The overarching report in terms of the themes and trends for the alerts are what are considered at kind of our clinical operational delivery group. What I would say is that we know that those themes and trends around somebody's rests and pulse are not medically valid. So that information in itself is not key information in terms of the information that the system gives us.
Thank you very much. So we could see here also in the second paragraph, these checks are used very infrequently. And that's the intention as I understand.
Yeah.
Would you accept that at least historically, the checks were actually frequent?
Absolutely. You know, before 2024, these were used quite regularly, and they weren't used for the purpose of taking somebody's pulse and breathing rates. They were used for the purpose of being able to see that the patient was okay. So they weren't used for the purpose it was intended.
Thank you. Could we move to the next page, please, and expand from the bottom, requesting data from OxyHealth? Would you expand that, please? That's very helpful. So can we see here, Mrs. Devaney, there may be times when we request information or data from OxyHealth to help us with internal reviews. For example, if there's been a safety or safeguarding incident. You're also able to request information if you have been involved in an incident. Any request must be made within 24 hours because the data is not available after this time. And do we see, if we look at the bullet points, clear video or images are automatically deleted after 24 hours? And so on. Does this pick up on the points that you were just explaining to us? The leaflet we're looking at, do you know if OxyHealth were involved in co-producing it?
I don't, I'm sorry.
Is it a possibility?
Yes, it's possible.
Would you take that down, please? Yeah, you've mentioned consent a few times, and I want to move on to that topic now, please.
Yeah.
The statement, this is at paragraph 7 on page 2, says this. there was an expectation that the local crisis team would have discussed the use of this technology with the patient. Now, that is exactly the point that you were just discussing, making, is it? The reference is to an expectation that it would be discussed, not a requirement.
Yeah.
Are you able to expand on that, how clear it is?
So in my view, there is a requirement. There are a number of things that we should explore with patients when they're coming in to a hospital environment. So I don't know, for example, things like that we are a no-smoking environment, you know, what that might mean around visiting. You know, so there are a number of things that we would expect coming into an inpatient area is very daunting for people. So we want to make sure that that conversation starts at that point, so people are not surprised, for want of a better phrase, when they arrive on our inpatient areas.
So it would be part of a conversation before they reach the ward, covering various other matters too?
Yes.
How meaningful a conversation would it be before someone hits the ward and is able actually to see the unit and so on?
I suppose for different people, it's back to that point that all of our patients are individuals, and actually for some people that might be incredibly important. For example, if somebody's experiencing some paranoia, the fact that they may go into an environment where this system was available it's a better way to prepare them for that conversation than just to land it on somebody. Some people might be so unwell that they don't take some of that information on board at that point, but it's important that we try.
And as you say, it might be specific to a patient, the approach that you adopt.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to the leaflet that we were looking at. Could you put up TUV 021314 at page 8, please? Can I opt out? Would you expand that, please? So this asks, can I opt out? You can ask for OxyHealth to be switched off in your bedroom. This is called opting out. Our priority is to keep you safe. If you ask to opt out, this will need to be considered by your responsible clinician and the multidisciplinary team caring for you. Your care team will assess the risk to your safety and your current mental capacity. They will also consider any potential harm the system may present to you at this time, together with the views from your carer, family or advocate. This will be regularly reviewed with you during your stay on the ward. So in brief, does TUV allow patients to opt out using Oxyvision rather than the system being off and only switched on if they consent?
Yes, and that will be part of the consideration of the review we mentioned earlier.
Well, can we deal with that now?
Yep.
So when a patient first arrives on the ward, is there a period, you've mentioned 72 hours before, whilst they're assessed, during which the question whether or not Oxyvision should be activated in their case will be considered?
Yes, so previous to 2024, we operated what we called an assumed consent model. And actually then, as our understanding of the system grew, we recognised that actually we needed to think about that more carefully. So we now have this opt-out approach. So it is considered at the point of admission. For all patients that come into our inpatient areas, we hold what is known as a 72-hour formulation meeting. So the time period that before, so if somebody decided to opt out, the system would still remain on for that 72-hour period. Actually, we would do the conversations as you described there in that leaflet. We would do those conversations, and as part of our formulation, the MDT would then consider somebody's capacity, family views, mental health advocate, if that was appropriate, in terms of that system remaining on.
So I'm going to ask, in a moment, I'm going to take you to a part of the policy, I think, and ask you to help us trace through a flow chart explaining all of that. So we'll deal with that in stages in a moment. Just dealing with the 72 hours, the assessment period.
Yeah.
The statement refers to the system itself, its use being blanket
Yeah.
during this assessment period.
Yes.
So there's no question of consent being an issue during this assessment period.
Yeah.
Even if a patient does not want the system activated, it will be activated.
Yes, that's correct. But what we are doing as part of the review, considering whether that approach remains applicable.
Thank you. During this 72-hour period, what factors might be considered when deciding about the use of Oxyvision? This is covered at paragraph 30, page 7. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes, I can get that. Yes.
So can we see here, reassessment of the mental capacity status is one. The current risk of patient harm to self and others is one, is that right?
Yeah.
Any particular risk of re-traumatization.
Yeah.
The availability and use of alternative care interventions. And whether the patient is admitted formally or informally.
Yeah.
Just dealing with that last point, why might it make a difference if a patient is a formal patient or informal
I
patient?
suppose it's part of the overall assessment, because actually I suppose it's more likely that somebody who's detained under the Mental Health Act, there may be some issues around capacity, but equally you could have somebody who was admitted informally, that discussion may need to happen.
Now, one of the things we don't see here is patient choice.
Yeah.
Is that a significant omission in your view?
I think it is, yes, because absolutely patient choice is key, because we're exploring with them, you know, their views on the use of the system as part of their stay on an inpatient area.
We've spoken already about an opt-out model of consent. And as I've said, what I want to do is just to work through that with you so we can understand it. You explained that this is a change in policy. Is that since August 2024?
Yes.
Could you put up TUV 021316, please? Page 12. So this is the TUV policy document from 2024. Could you show the top of the 12th page, please? Thank you. What I want to do with you, Mrs. Devaney, is to trace through what happens where you have a patient who has capacity but does not consent to the use of Oxyvision, please.
Yeah.
So can we do that by reference to this flow chart? So do we see at the top, OxyHealth status initially switched on upon patient admission to support patient safety and safeguarding. So is this the 72-hour assessment period?
This is the 72-hour assessment period, yes.
Then do we see at 1, fully inform patients, family carers, advocate about OxyHealth's purpose and functionality as part of the admissions procedure, document discussion and decision, and any queries in patient record. Again, does that reflect what you've been explaining to us? Thank you. Do we see then a diamond underneath with the text, does the patient have capacity to understand implications of OxyHealth?
Yes.
And if we say, as I've said, can we just take the example where they do?
Yeah.
We follow the yes to the right, and then do we see underneath, does the patient object?
Yeah.
Can we follow that through assuming that they do?
Yeah.
Do we then go down to the box with 2B?
That's correct.
So just reading that, document discussion and objection in patient record and inform responsible clinician within 24 hours.
Yeah.
So this is all, is it, within this 72-hour assessment period?
Yeah.
And the system is remaining on at this stage?
At that point, yes.
Do we then see at box 3, full MDT, that's multidisciplinary team, is it?
It is.
Meeting within 72 hours, patient capacity reassessed, objection discussed and documented as part of individual risk assessment.
Yes.
Must consider potential harms of Oxy Health. Now, Oxy Health there is a reference to the Oxyvision system, isn't it?
Yes.
To patient and alternative interventions, yes?
Yes.
And clinical recommendations made on use of Oxy Health. So is the next step after a patient has objected that the issue is raised at the MDT?
Yes.
So the patient's objection is not viewed as the final word in terms of consent and the consent model used at TÜV.
No.
As the system continues to remain on.
Yes.
What input do patients and carers have into the MDT?
So they would be involved. It's what's known, we call our 72-hour formulation meeting, and that happens for all patients. It is, so the purpose of that 72 hours, I suppose this chart describes the information we're gathering in terms of people's views towards the use of Oxyvision, but actually the 72-hour formulation meeting is gathering all of our clinical, historical information about and current information about the patient, and then the MDT come together alongside the patient and the family to formulate care. So that's where the formulation plan is developed. Obviously, there's an initial plan at the point of admission, but this is about information gathering, and it's part of our what's known as our purposeful inpatient admissions process.
Can I ask you a question I asked you previously in a different connection? And it's about this disconnect between expectations and what actually happens on the ward. So, for example, we've heard from EPUT about a recent review of their consent process, which discovered, amongst other things, that the proper consent practice was not often being used. Are you confident, or how confident can you be, that all of this actually happens at TÜV?
So I think we've got a good level of assurance about that now. Previously, before 2024, I don't think we're in a strong position, but we now explore those matron audits on a monthly basis in the clinical steering group. We also know, and I think there's certainly information within the pack submitted, that our opt-out numbers have increased. So where we have what we would call rooms turned off, if you like. So we know that actually we see that practice happening. So we're checking it from, a clinical perspective in terms of that monthly basis from matrons, but then we're also reviewing the data to say actually, do we see that change? Or, is there, for example, if we saw a particular ward where nobody opted out, that would cause concern and identify a need to go and explore that further.
Can I just pick up, since you've mentioned it, on the governance arrangements?
Yeah.
You've mentioned, there's a monthly governance structure, we understand from the statement from paragraph 43, since January 2025.
Yes.
So is that it's a relatively recent development?
Yes.
And we've heard, you've mentioned the matron, I think. The statement at paragraph 44 picks up on the monthly manager and matron audits. Is that what you were referring to?
Yes.
And it explains that the purpose there is to ensure system functionality, adherence to policy, and to provide regular patient, carer and staff feedback.
Yes.
Correct?
You said earlier in answer to Mr. Griffin that you agreed that patients' objections are not the final word, because we've seen what else the MDT will be considering. What weight, though, do you think is given to the patient's objections?
So it's a difficult question to answer, but what I would say is that actually our options, if we thought somebody had capacity, if they are not consenting, our only option after that would be to consider a best interest decision. And I can't recall when we've had to do that. So actually, what that tells me is that, the majority of the time, if a patient has capacity and is not consenting, then we would adhere to that and we would switch the system off at 72 hours.
Thank you.
Do you have data about that?
So I think we would have that available. I could certainly explore if that could be made available to the inquiry, if that's helpful.
Thank you. Just sticking with this flowchart, please. Can we see at 4B, MDT meeting with patient family care advocate, decision documented in patient record?
Yeah.
And if we look at decision 5A, Oxyvision status to be switched on, and then following it through to 6, use of OxyHealth further discussed as part of the MDT reviews with patient, family, carers, advocate to consider. And then do we see a number of factors there, only one of which is patient choice?
Yeah.
So could one outcome be where you've got a patient with capacity who objects to Oxyvision, be that they are effectively overruled by the MDT and it's kept on?
So it could be, but as I said, I can't recall a situation where that's, because our only option after that would be a best interest discussion and decision, and I can't recall that ever happening.
But in theory, at least, the decision ultimately isn't the patient's, it's the MDT's, correct?
Yeah, it's a joint decision, yes.
I mean, with that in mind, can this system or this model actually be described as consent at all?
So in my view, yes, because we're respecting the patient's decision once we've considered all the other information available. I think, we recognise that we want to review that consent model further, which is why we're undertaking the review. So I think there are opportunities to strengthen that. But are patient views ultimately upheld? I believe, yes, they are.
Do you know whether OxyHealth had any involvement in the decision to use this opt-out model?
I'm sorry, I can't comment on that.
In other words, you don't know?
Yes,
Thank you. Could you take that down, please? You've spoken now or mentioned a number of times this ongoing review.
Yeah.
So my questions, the questions I'm about to ask you are subject obviously to that. But just want to look at the basis of the Trust's current policy from 2024. The policy makes reference to the National Mental Health and Learning Disability Nurse Directors Forum.
Yes, that's correct.
Did that forum have as its primary aim to review how vision-based patient monitoring systems are used across the country and to make recommendations that will support safe use of patients, staff and organisations?
I understand that's what it was. I wasn't involved in that review.
But in fact, are you able to confirm that members of the relevant working group included TUVE's then chief nurse?
Yes, it was Elizabeth Moody at the time.
Moody.
Yeah.
And several others, including OxyHealth's then UK managing director.
Yeah.
Did the forum go on to provide a report which covered the issue of consent, as far as you're aware?
Yes.
In fact, I think, and we've discussed this with other witnesses, but my recollection is that it provides two options for consent. One is implicit consent, and the other is a more explicit opt-in.
Yes.
Is that your recollection?
Yes.
The TUVE policy, the 24 policy, states that the forum guidance and recommendations from this work and further co-creation provides an evidence base which underpins this policy. So clearly important to the 2024 policy.
Yeah.
The inquiry is aware of subsequent guidance of potential significance that doesn't appear to have been considered for the purposes of the policy and procedure. So, for example, the NHS England principles for using digital technologies in mental health inpatient treatment. Now, that's from 2025, February 2025. Are you aware of that policy?
So I am, and the group has reviewed our current guidance alongside that. I think there's a number of publications that have been made available kind of since we reviewed the policy, and that will be part of the ongoing review and evaluation to make sure that we've considered all of those.
Part of the principles. One of them relates to consent and capacity.
Yeah.
And it includes that where a patient has capacity to consent to the use of digital technology, consent should always be sought from the patient.
Yes.
And it refers to this: a digital technology must never be used as a blanket approach.
Yeah.
You say that this is going to be reviewed, but with that in mind, do you think there's a need for an urgent review of current policy?
Yes. I think when it's been reviewed, I think the steering group did consider that policy and felt that we were compliant.
That you were or weren't, sorry.
That we were compliant with that. But I think from what you've said, I think it's fair to say that we would get to the point that we were compliant, but it's taken us 72 hours to get to that point. So it is something that we should consider as a matter of urgency.
Including potentially also that the decision for a patient with capacity is down to the MDT rather than to the patient. Is that something that you think might be reviewed?
So I think that decision, that is the MDT considering the person's position on their consent, sorry, not capacity. I think the MDT is almost rubbing stamping that, and I think that would be good clinical practice to make sure that we've considered the views of the family, the patients, any advocates before that final decision is made. I do think we hear the patient's voice in that decision.
If it's just a rubber stamp, effectively, doesn't that beg the question about giving the final word to the MDT?
Yeah, I can hear what you're saying, but I do think that actually, you know, the principle of that approach is about best practice and make sure that we've considered all information that is available to us before that device is switched off.
Thank you very much. What I would like to do now, please, Mrs. Devaney, is to move to the risks as they're currently understood at the Trust. This is covered in the statement at paragraph 38, and that's page 9. Can we put that up, please? Page 9, paragraph 38, please. Thank you very much. So we could see risks from A to K there, and we'll look at a few of them in a moment. The statement suggests that these issues were not anticipated and have emerged over time. I think from an answer you gave earlier, that would surprise you, is that right? So I asked you previously when no risks were identified at the start of it. The fact that they've only emerged over time, do you find that surprising?
So I think some of them, we should have understood at the beginning.
How did they emerge? Were they revealed through deaths or near misses, complaints, audits, patient feedback and the like?
I think it's a mixture of all of those things.
And what about information coming out of this inquiry?
So, yes, I think people have, you know, kind of taken note of not only what is being said in this inquiry, but also is said more broadly, nationally. I think, you know, we're fortunate in TÜV that we have a co-production board and we have a director for patient experience, and we have a number of stakeholders who are involved in that group who have made their views very clearly known to us over the last few years.
Thank you. Can we look just at a few of these points? Paragraph 38. We could see as A, relational unintended consequences of the system as patient behaviours change and use of the systems to seek relational support.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So for a number of our patients that may experience relational challenges, they can become incredibly distressed. They might have experienced historic harm and trauma, and actually, therefore, how they communicate or how they're able to communicate may be very different from how you and I would understand how people communicate. So what is meant by that is that actually for some people, whereas historically before something like oxyvision kind of existed, if when we had things like 15-minute checks or whatever, then a patient might choose to involve themselves in an episode of self-harm because they know that a staff member may then respond, that will come and check on them in 15 minutes. So actually they might be trying to communicate something via that self-harm. There's a risk with oxyvision that actually our patients understand that if they, for example, remain in their bathroom for 3 minutes, an alert will sound and a member of staff will respond. So that in itself is a risk, because actually if somebody was delayed in their response, in the same way if somebody didn't undertake a 15-minute check, then actually, that could be dangerous and result in significant harm.
May I just see if I've understood? Is part of the point that you're making that the system, the existence of the system in a patient's bedroom may actually alter their behaviour?
It could do for some patients, not all patients.
Depends on the individual person.
Their diagnosis, their individual presentation.
We can see next an impact on privacy and dignity. Is there anything more you'd like to say about that? We've talked about the presence of the camera in the room and so on.
Yeah, I think it's touched on a little further down, but for me, the concern around that one would be about people's psychological safety and feeling safe. Very often when somebody's admitted to hospital, they've felt whether they're suffering from, kind of an affective or a psychosis presentation, actually their world doesn't feel very safe. And if somebody comes into an environment when then a camera is observing them, that can contribute to that feeling of not being safe.
Is that the point at H that we see here, latrogenic harm of use of the system, i.e. increasing paranoia,
that's
perception of surveillance, impact on historical trauma?
Yeah, that's actually an I, so it's iatrogenic harm, sorry.
Is that what you were talking about?
Yes, so it's iatrogenic harm by use of the system.
Oh, so I've missed, that's an I.
Yes.
That's my fault. Thank you for correcting me. There are a number of the bullet points there, C and D, for example, where we see points relating to alerts and alarm fatigue.
Yeah.
I don't intend to ask you anything more about that unless there's something more you'd like to explain.
No.
Can we see at K, the risk, staff using the system as not initially intended and outside policy, i.e. using the system to conduct observations during the day or as a replacement of direct observations. Could you go over the page, please, and expand paragraph 39? So do we see there reference to the concern that the use of oxyvision technology for observations could decrease opportunities for therapeutic engagement?
Yes.
And over-reliance on remote monitoring, which I understand to be a similar point. What's being addressed here in your view?
So I think this is about the point that I mentioned earlier, where we had staff who are pressing silencing the alert, or resetting the alert, I should say, in the ward office, because actually they're anxious about what the patient is doing. So the system presented an opportunity that wasn't for its purpose, that actually you could then press for a vital signs, you would then see the image of the patient, and you would be able to say, identify quickly if that patient was coming to harm or causing themselves harm in that room. And I think that's what it's been referring to.
Thank you very much. Would you take that down, please? So we've heard of the 50 wards at Tuve that have or will have oxyvision installed. How is the expansion of the system in this way reconciled with what we've been talking about and the risks that we can see, we've just been seeing on the screen?
I think that's our ever-evolving process to review our policy and our approach to consent. I think we have seen that actually since we've improved that for a lot of areas, particularly our long stay areas, because of course all our wards aren't assessment and treatment. So in secure inpatient services and our rehab wards, people could be with us for months or even years. And in those areas, we're hardly using the system at all. I think we do see benefits in the system in MHSOP because we were able to potentially respond to falls quickly if somebody is on the side of the bed or out of bed. And also that makes that risk of falls identifiable earlier, so therefore we can care plan more appropriately around that.
Can we come back to that point now?
Yeah.
This point about where Oxyvision may be of greatest assistance, and
Yeah.
then maybe also where of least assistance.
Yeah.
So I think you've mentioned at least 2 times now the older adult scenario and falls.
Yeah.
Is that where you see this kind of technology being of greatest application?
Yes, at this point, for what we know as an organisation, my view would be that's where we see the greatest benefit.
We've received evidence that there are alternative forms of technology that address falls, for example,
yes.
like bed pads,
They are, yeah.
that might be cheaper and less
Yeah.
invasive. When you take those into account, how significant is this function of Oxyvision within the older adult context?
So I think some of those systems may do similar things. We're obviously working with the system at the moment, and it's a system that we use in the organisation. So it makes sense that we continue to use this to help us in that area.
Are there other types of ward where, in your view, there is a real purpose for Oxyvision?
So I think it has offered something as an assistive technology. I think, kind of that some of the areas that I mentioned around the use in seclusion, the use after rapid trank, the preventing of disturbing people on a night, and the benefits for our MHSOP wards have added something. I think we've also identified a number of risks along the way, and I'll come back to the review. I know you're going to ask me about that, but I think that's why we're clear as an organisation. We need to change as new information becomes available, and we need to make sure that the more we understand, we're clear that this is a system that's fit for purpose in our environments.
You've referred to older adults and seclusion and that type of ward. Would you agree that the evidence you're giving today suggests quite a narrow context in which Oxyvision can usefully be deployed?
Yes, I think that's accurate.
You meant that the statement mentions, and this is paragraph 64 at page 15, that there are some wards across the trust where all patients have opted out of using Oxyvision completely.
Yes.
These are often wards with longer length of stay.
Yes.
What's the correlation between a patient with a longer length of stay and opting out of Oxyvision?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
My fault and with my question. So what's the correlation between wards with patients who have a longer stay and opting out? Why would it be more likely that a patient who has a longer stay would opt out of the use of Oxyvision?
I suppose they probably maybe have had opportunity to consider it and think about it more. Some people who were admitted to assessment and treatment wards, they may be new to that environment completely. Some people may have not had any experience of mental health services previously. And for some of our environments, people are detained for excessive periods of time. So actually they may be more familiar with the environment, but certainly what our experience is that it's those environments where the patients choose to not have the system turned on.
I want to look at a paragraph in the statement, please. Would you put up the statement at page 8 and expand paragraph 32, please? Page 8, please. Paragraph 32 at the top, please. Thank you. This says the use of the system is reviewed on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
That's what you've been explaining.
Yes.
The recent reviews showed high rates of opt-out throughout the trust, most notably in secure patient services, eating disorder wards and rehab wards. Now, would secure patient services include seclusion?
Yes, but you would also see seclusion on our psychiatric intensive care units. So somebody could be transferred from an adult assessment and treatment ward, for example, to our intensive care unit if that need was identified, and then therefore could be secluded in that environment.
So one of the areas in which you thought Oxyvision has real benefit was seclusion.
Yeah.
Am I oversimplifying things if I suggest that this paragraph at least suggests that's also one of the areas where there are higher opt-out rates?
So yes, I think you are, because actually our seclusion probably is used. So we have a number of seclusion rooms in our secure inpatient services. We also have those in our 2 psychiatric intensive care environments. And for some people who are perhaps unwell in our secure inpatient services, they may not be the people who've chosen not to consent and may end up in seclusion. So yes, I think, I don't know whether I've answered that.
Oh, well, I think you've pointed out to me very politely that I may have misunderstood, and so I take that point. Chair, do you have any questions for Mrs. Devaney?
No.
May I ask that we take a 15-minute break until 12:35? This is the process now. I've finished with my questions for you. There's a pause while I find out whether there are 1 or 2 more questions I need to put to you. So we may come back in 15 minutes,
Okay.
but we may not. If we don't, may I say thank you to you for your evidence.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I thank you very much indeed? It's been incredibly helpful to hear from you.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Griffith.
Chair, just a few more questions for Mrs. Devaney. You mentioned that Oxyvision allows you to monitor themes and to see trends in, for example, someone's heart rate,
Yeah.
but that those readings wouldn't be medically accurate.
Yeah.
May I just ask you about that, please? Should we understand from that evidence that you mean that the system capability allows vital signs to be constantly monitored, and therefore themes or patterns in a patient's heart rate or breathing rate are capable of being plotted and monitored?
Yes.
Is that a tool that TÜV uses?
We don't use it in that way.
When you were referring earlier to the use to which the data can be used and so on, my understanding is that you were referring to this kind of thing, or were you referring to something different?
So the data that we would look at would be information about, from the matron reports. We would look at information around rooms that were out of use. We would look at information around where alerts have been reset for particular wards. We would also look at, I can't think of what else we would look at, but there's a variety of data that we would look at in relation to this, that the system provides, as well as what we understand more broadly about how it functions and is delivered across our services.
So we heard evidence last year from a witness from EPUT that they would use the vital signs function as you've described, but that separately in the background, the system was functioning, I think, all of the time and producing vital signs readings that were not medically accurate.
Yes.
So is that the function that you do not use?
Yes, so it's there, it's available, but we don't use that data for anything because it's not medically accurate.
You said in your evidence that the only wards where Oxyvision is not installed is on learning disability wards. You've, as I mentioned before, we've been provided by TUV with a list of the 50 or so wards where Oxyvision has been installed, is being installed, or will be installed.
Yeah.
That includes a number of learning disability wards. May I give you an example? Langley, male forensic rehabilitation, learning disabilities, going live 5th of August last year. Kite, male low secure learning disability, going live 7th of February last year. Clover, female medium secure learning disability, going live on last year. And similarly, Swift, female medium secure learning disability, going live last year. So that would suggest that, in fact, Oxyvision is being deployed in learning disability wards. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, apologies, that's probably my description on it. All of those wards that you mentioned are part of our secure inpatient services where we absolutely do use the system. What I was referring to was our adult learning disabilities services where we have a ward, a unit called Bankfields that has a number of smaller units on it. We haven't installed it within that provision.
Thank you. Given the narrow purpose of Oxyvision, as in fact adopted by TUV, your explanation that it should not be used at all for anyone at risk of self-harm or anyone requiring observations at level 2 or above, what basis is there for making it mandatory, that blanket approach, in the first 72 hours?
I think that's to gather all the relevant information, to understand, kind of, because we do know, as we say, some patients may need rapid tranquillisation. They don't need to be on a PICU, for example, to receive rapid tranq. So somebody may receive rapid tranq in our assessment and treatment wards, or they may be transferred to a psychiatric intensive care unit. It is just about that 72-hour period is about making sure that we've got all the relevant information available to us to make that decision. Thank you.
When addressing the topic of consent, you indicated that after 2024, as our understanding of the system grew, we realised we need to consider consent more carefully.
Yes.
In what respect did your understanding of the system and related consent issues change in or around 2024? So you've described to us the opt-out model. What was that a change from? The statement addresses it from paragraph 10.
Yeah, and I think what the system that we had in place prior to that was almost an implied consent. And prior to that, I don't think we were following the procedure that was set out at that point, not a policy, in terms of people's consent. And I don't think we had any assurance that that was being undertaken appropriately and as it should be. So the review moved to that opt-out model that gave kind of that greater consideration to somebody's views, their kind of capacity to be able to consent at that point. And I think the way that we're able to demonstrate that we're using that in an effective way is to, prior to 2024, you would see very few of those, what we call those rooms that are not in use, whereas now we are able to monitor that changes regularly as patients move in and out of our assessment and treatment wards. More static in those longer stay areas, but it certainly changes more frequently. And actually we do see that consent approach does result quite frequently in people having rooms turned off.
So just for the record, paragraph 10 of the statement,
Yeah.
which refers to the approach prior to the opt-out
Yeah.
approach in August 2024, it says this: prior to August 2024, once the OxyHealth system was implemented and it went live on a ward, this was turned on as standard with an implied consent model. A patient only had the opportunity to opt out of the system in exceptional circumstances.
That's
Is that your
correct.
understanding?
Yes.
Why, given that the system had first been piloted in 2019 and then was increasingly rolled out, why had it taken so long for CHUV to come on to the opt-out model only in August 2024? Why did it take so long to address consent issues to the extent that you have?
So I suppose I could offer a view on that as to whether it's factual, because, you know, the people who were involved in that time and no longer work for the organisation. But I think it was people believing that they were doing the right thing, and I think not considering fully the implications around consent. And I think it was, as those reviews were undertaken and the risks, as we talked about earlier, there was no risks identified initially. And actually, as those risks began to become further understood, it was readily accepted that we needed to look at the way that we were managing the system and the governance that we had around the system.
Thank you. Just sticking with the change of approach in August 2024, to what extent was that informed by additional information provided by OxyHealth?
I wouldn't be able to answer that, sorry. I don't know.
Do you know, or can you estimate, whether there are any incidents or types of incidents that Oxyvision has helped to prevent?
So I think that's difficult to answer. I would refer back to the answer that I gave earlier. So has there been circumstances where people have responded to a room and been able to intervene in a situation where people have been self-harming, been alerted to certain activity that would cause us concern? Yes.
But is there data that underpins what you've just said?
Yes, we would be able to identify that data. However, I suppose what we wouldn't be able to clearly articulate or be confident of is the reason for, you know, was that somebody trying to communicate something? Did they understand that actually if they stood in the bathroom for 3 minutes, then a member of staff would appear because actually an alert would be triggered?
So is that going back to the point that you made that I tried to summarise as being that in certain circumstances the existence of the technology itself
Yes.
might change a patient's approach?
Yes.
How has the system been used to deal with concerns about safeguarding, and has it proven useful in that respect?
So I would say where we would have concerns about safeguarding may be where we've had an incident on the ward where, you know, perhaps an assault of a patient, etc., where actually it's deemed to be a criminal activity that actually we would investigate and safeguard appropriately as an organisation. So I think there has been a number of incidents where we've used footage in that way.
Thank you. You identified a number of risks in the witness statement. This is paragraph 38 at page 9. Do you recall we went through them?
Yes.
The first one was relational unintended consequences
Yeah.
of the system. Have they been mitigated by the new policy implemented from 2024 onwards?
No.
You've given evidence about the now restricted use of Oxyvision, but can you help with this? One type of service or ward that you haven't talked about yet is Section 136 suites, or health-based places of safety.
Yeah.
Is Oxyvision used there at Juve?
No.
So those are the questions, the additional questions that I have. Do you have any further questions?
I don't have any further questions.
The further and ongoing evaluation that you referred to, the inquiry legal team will be in contact with the Juve legal team to seek disclosure of the report and any further relevant documents.
Of course,
Thank you
yes.
very much.
Can I thank you again for coming?
Thank you.
And what time do you want us back?
2 o'clock. Apologies for forgetting to say that. 2 o'clock.